On today's episode of Broken Beautiful Me, we are stepping into a conversation that feels like opening a window in a room you didn't realize had gone stale. Hans Weygoldt joins us, and there is something about his presence. It's steady, thoughtful, quietly brave, and it invites you to breathe a little deeper. His story isn't loud or dramatic. It's the kind that sneaks up on you, reminding you of the strength that grows in the cracks we try so hard to hide. As you listen, let yourself lean into the honesty, the tenderness, the unexpected hope woven through his words. This isn't just an interview. It's an invitation to see your own journey with softer eyes and maybe discover that you're not as alone as you thought. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me, stories of hope, gratitude, and resilience. I'm your host, Kelly Buckley, and today we are so fortunate to have as our guest Hans Weygoldt. Hans is a transformational coach, breathwork facilitator, and founder of Neuroscience, LLC. Drawing from his own journey of overcoming an 8-year opioid addiction, Hans now guides high-performing executives, entrepreneurs, and visionaries through hidden struggles with stress, self-sabotage, and addiction. His signature program, Neuro Liberation, blends neuroscience, breathwork, and consciousness-based coaching to help clients break destructive cycles, rewire limiting beliefs, and unlock their limitless potential. Hans is currently pursuing a master's in consciousness-based leadership and coaching, where he deepens his study of human potential and creative intelligence. His work bridges science and spirituality, offering practical tools for nervous system regulation, emotional mastery, and authentic leadership. Known for his grounded, compassionate approach, Hans empowers leaders to move beyond willpower into self-trust, presence, and purpose. Whether through one-on-one coaching or group sessions or his writings, he inspires others to embrace their vulnerability, transcend fear, and create meaningful change in their lives and organizations. Welcome, Hans. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly, for the introduction. It's an honor to be on your podcast today.
So, just to get us started, your journey from addiction to freedom is both raw and inspiring. Can you kind of take our audience back to the moment when you realized, the path that you were on was breaking you and what first sparked your hope for healing?
Yeah, I realized pretty on in my addiction that this path was not gonna get me to where I wanted in life. And my addiction created a lot of anxiety and depression, which, on the other hand, created more need for numbing my emotions and all these negative feelings that I was running away from.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest motivation for transformation was the birth of my son, which, gave me a whole nother reason and purpose to live. But it was until 2015 when I went to Peru and had the opportunity to experience ayahuasca, where I suddenly had this shift in consciousness, which then supplied me with the tools I needed to overcome my addiction and embark on this journey as a breathwork facilitator.
Oh my gosh, that's remarkable. So, for our audience who are not familiar with ayahuasca and the change in consciousness, can you kind of give us an explanation for that for people who are not familiar?
It's a psychedelic brew used in the Amazon for thousands of years in the United States as a Schedule 1 substance. At the same time, it's protected under the Religious Freedom Act, meaning that churches with the status can serve ayahuasca in the United States. And I had the opportunity to experience in Peru with shamans who've done many thousand sessions, and make it their life purpose to serve this medicine to people who seek emotional and spiritual healing.
It's from nature. And does this allow you then for the walls to kind of fall down and bring clarity for you about what needs to be the step forward? What kind of feeling did you have after you did that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, my first ceremony, because at that time I didn't know anything about healing properties of plant medicines. I don't want to say a junkie, but that's probably what I was, because I was severely abusing opiates, other
Mhm.
substances. And when I heard about this, I said, oh, that's another great way to trip. So that was my intentions. And I went to this ceremony with having all these expectations of what psychedelics are, and nothing happened. I was laying there in
Mm.
the dark and nothing happened. And how it works, they give you a serving, and then 2 hours later, if you want more, they give you another one, and another late hour, another one. And I took 3 servings and I didn't feel anything because I had these expectations of this deep psychedelic experience. So after a while, all my anger, frustration that I had stored inside of me for years, doing work through my addiction, all this anger and frustration came up, and said, I'm not going to lay here being angry anymore. I'm just going to close my eyes, go to sleep. And when I made that decision to completely surrender and give up, in one moment, my consciousness shifted, and I was filled with this deep love and joy for life. I was laying on the mat in this yurt for 2 hours, crying tears of joy, so grateful to be alive. And that stayed with me, that joy. I found this love inside, and suddenly I just started appreciating life how it is and enjoying every moment of it.
Mm. That sounds so wonderful. To be able to let go of the anger and embrace the love. I think that's a goal we all strive for. That's so beautiful in the way that you describe it. And the several doses, I wonder if, I believe in how things unfold in life. That's one of the things, and I wonder if somehow it was known that you needed to be angry, you needed to get that fire going in order to finally release it, right?
Yes, because I never allowed myself to get angry. As soon as I got angry or started feeling anger, I started using substances and numb the anger, which helped me
Yeah.
to stay in a beautiful state until the substances wore out, and then the anger just got worse, and I keep suppressing it for years.
So from there, you have this beautiful experience. So how does that tell me about the path then that took you from there to your own personal healing, and then how you transformed it into, continuing learning and education and helping other people on their path. Tell me that journey.
Yeah. So when I returned from Peru, I had this fire of curiosity inside of me. And I started reading everything I could find about consciousness, psychedelics, healing, meditation. And the second book that fell into my hands was called The Ultimate Journey, The Mystery of Life and Death, written by Stanislaw Graf.
Mm.
And one of the chapter, he explains holotropic breathwork that he developed, I think in the 60s or 70s. And he was explaining that through this breathwork accompanied with music, you can experience similar states of expanded consciousness as you can with psychedelics. And that fueled more curiosity in me. So I decided to finally find a breathwork facilitator to teach me.
What was your first breathwork experience like?
So my first breathwork experience is still the most meaningful and deepest experience I've had, and is the one that made me decide to become a breathwork facilitator. I remember breathing as hard as I could. I didn't have a right instructor at that time. I didn't have any good instructions at all. So I was just breathing as hard as I could. And I remember thinking, I cannot keep up this breath anymore. And that's the last thought I remember. And then for 1 hour, my mind just shut off. My body kept breathing in the way without me being conscious, aware of it. And all I experienced is beauty, bliss, and this inner state of silence. When I came back out of the experience, I started questioning everything I believed about myself, anything about my limiting beliefs.
With breath work, do you like I in my experience with breath work, I think too some of the patterns that we inherit from our past generations, our families, those limiting beliefs that we don't even realize that we carry every day. Breath work allows us to let them bubble up and let them go. What are your thoughts on that?
In breathwork, one of the philosophy is to trust the process and surrender as deeply. And we also say the only way past is through. There's no way around. And that means that a breathwork session, we never know what's going to happen, what's coming up. But whatever is come up is what we need in this moment to heal and to move closer towards wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what trauma one holds within, what limiting beliefs, emotion, anything can come up. It's really very different from individual to individual.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about breathwork being kind of a gateway to emotional liberation, and I thought that was just such a beautiful way to describe it. For those who feel trapped in their own stories, so some of our listeners are coming here, they have been through some of the most difficult struggles in their life, and sometimes they feel stuck by the stories, by what has happened to them, by the emotions that they have pushed down over the years. Can you explain to our audience how breath work can begin to unlock that door to healing for them?
Yeah, I think it's quite common for people to have an emotional release, a sudden emotional release. And as I mentioned before, I was suppressing emotion for years, and these suppressed emotions, they cause an energetic block within our system, in our nervous system. And when we get to release the emotions, it's like a huge weight drops off ourselves, and then thinking becomes clearer. Life becomes life becomes much more manageable if we get rid of all these emotions.
I think in today's world, which is it's a complicated place and we cannot deny that. But there are still so many possibilities for peace in your own individual life. And I think when we work, really, that's the only control we have is over how we present ourselves in this world. So, breathwork gives you the opportunity to let go of some of the things that cause you anxiety and to move through this world probably as we were designed to love each other.
Mhm.
So now you've translated this into working with high performing leaders and executives. On the surface, I'm sure people look at people who are in positions like that and think that they have it all. But with that comes a lot of stress and anxiety. What patterns do you see in how success can mask emotional pain? And how do you help the individuals that you work with reclaim their self worth beyond the office?
Success itself can become an addictive pattern if we are not willing to face our emotions, feel them. A lot of people start developing become workaholics, or just start chasing success, one success after the other. What I realized from my own experience and from what I hear a lot of people say, once you reach that success and you haven't found your self-worth and this connection with yourself, you still feel hollow. You get the success, you chase a new high, and then you fall back down into a challenging emotional state. And then so it can become an addiction, chasing one success after the other to bury these emotions inside.
Mm-hmm. And to get that feeling of a win, I mean, you're so right. That is, in a way, an addiction in itself, to be on that treadmill. Generational trauma is a thread that runs through your teaching. Can you share how facing only your own wounds, but but not addressing the ones that may have come from your family, like how does that shape your healing, and how do you guide people who maybe need to deal with a great deal of generational trauma to heal?
You know, we did have a lot of generational trauma in our family. And I recently had a conversation with my mother about emotions. And she told me she felt such a hurt through the relationship with her father that she taught us to not feel pain. Even when we got hurt, she said, "Oh, it's not bad." And emotions were never expressed in our family. Hurt was not expressed, sadness was not expressed, and anger was not expressed. I remember a couple of times when my dad got angry and he just left the room. So I grew up with this belief that it is not okay to show anger. It's embarrassing. And the same with sadness and hurt. So these are emotions I never got any connection with because of the generational trauma my mother had with her dad. And that trauma gets, if we don't break that cycle, it gets stuck throughout generations.
Mm-hmm.
And breathwork really helped me to understand that and release a lot of that and get better in touch with my emotions.
What does your mom think about breath work when you what does she think about your path that you're on now?
I think she was very concerned and skeptical at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because, first of all, I had a very well paying job that I quit in 2019, a year before I started learning breathwork. At the same time, she realized how I've changed, how my relationship with her changed, how the relationship with my wife and my children changed, and how much happier I am, and that I feel this inner balance that she didn't see before. She was really concerned before when she realized about my addictive patterns and my depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a big supporter of what I do because she sees the change firsthand. Because I don't think anyone can be better than she does.
Yeah. I'm sure that seeing you happy, I mean, that's what moms want to see in their children, is just happiness when it comes down to it. So, but I ask you that question because I know that, our parents' generation, the expression of emotion, like I can go back to my childhood, very similar. The expression of emotion was, we just didn't talk about things in the same way. We didn't see the value of processing things that happened. And as a consequence, they just stay there under the surface and keep bubbling up when something comes up. So thank you for kind of explaining from your perspective about that generational trauma, because that I know that resonates with me as a person, and will so with the audience. In your practice, you integrate psychedelic assisted therapy and coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how you approach that with your clients?
So with my clients, I mostly use breathwork and coaching. I have a job with Mindbloom, who offers legal psychedelics assisted therapy in the United States, and
Okay.
I'm an integration coach working for them. But in my private practice, I only use breathwork and coaching because my belief is psychedelic substances are wonderful for healing, but
Mm-hmm.
breath teaches you to rely on everything you already have inside of you without
Mm.
substances.
That's beautiful. Somatic and emotional release are central to your approach. For someone who has spent years numbing pain, what does it look like to feel safe and release what's been, for somebody who is considering coming to see you and become a client? What can you tell them that would, allay their fears and make them feel more comfortable with trying this breathwork thing? Because, people are still learning about this practice. So, how do you present it when a potential client comes to you about what it will be like?
Yes, I know you mentioned fear, and that's a very important aspect because in order to have an emotional release in breathwork, it's important to feel safe, that you feel safe in the space there you are with the facilitator and with the group if you do it in a group session. About emotional release, I want to say a few words about how this breathwork works that I facilitate. Through this changed breathing rhythm, you inhale more oxygen than you usually do, and you exhale more CO2, and you change the ratio of the gases, which turns the blood alkaline. And through this change, there's less activity in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the part of the brain that creates the image of the self. And when we get out of the prefrontal cortex, we manage to get more into our emotional part of the brain. And that's usually, once we get out, that's where the emotional releases happen. And I've had, I have many clients breathe and suddenly burst out crying and releasing emotions without any fear of embarrassment or judgment, which is another very important part of breathwork. Knowing that it's a safe space to release emotions without fear, without judgment. And once you feel safe, that is when your nervous system allows you to express these emotions that's been stored.
Hmm. I want to say thank you. That was the most wonderful explanation of the physiological process of breath work and how it affects your brain. I really appreciate that. I think that's going to help so many people understand. So thank you. That helped me as well. Because there's still things when I do breath work, I'm like, oh, how is this happening? I'm still figuring it out myself. You say that healing isn't meant to be done alone. And I so agree with that. How do you foster community and connection in your work, especially for people who may come to you feeling shame or feeling like they need to hide themselves? How do you give them that sense of community and they're not alone?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say a few things about shame and guilt because you mentioned it. When I stopped abusing substances 10 years ago, I still felt a lot of shame, guilt, and regret for my past lifestyle choices. I hadn't taken anything, not even alcohol, for over a year, and I still was regretting all my behavior in the past. And breathwork really helped me to get over that guilt, shame, and regret. While I was feeling these emotions, it's very hard to move forward because my head was constantly spinning. I wish I hadn't done this. I'm such a loser. I'm a failure. And I couldn't openly talk about it. Now, when I say healing doesn't happen alone. There's such a benefit of having a sharing circle in, for example, in breathwork sessions, or also in a lot of psychedelic ceremonies like ayahuasca done in big group, and there's a sharing circle in the end. And that's the same after each breathwork session in groups, there's a sharing circle. And in that time, everybody has the opportunity to share in a safe space. And when you start sharing about vulnerable material from your past, your nervous system starts developing a sense of safety. The nervous system realizes, I'm not being judged. People understand me. They see who I am. They can relate to my struggles. I was hiding my addiction for years. I was never able to talk about it because of fear of judgment and shame. But once I did, it was very liberating because I started to accept this part of me that I had been repressing or suppressing for many, many years. And I think that's what I say with healing doesn't happen alone. And it doesn't have to be a big group. It can also be a coach who listens to you without judgment, a coach who embodies this inner peace and silence. I want to say it's contagious. Like if someone walks in a room with negative emotions and anger, and everybody starts feeling that emotion. And it's similar if you meet a breathwork facilitator, a group of people who feel this inner peace and balance. You start feeling it, and that's how you really teach yourself to be safe and release all these negative energies, emotions, and shame and guilt.
In one of my early breathwork sessions, what bubbled up for me was something that I felt shame and guilt about for many, many years, and it surprised me. I didn't expect that to happen, and I spoke about it, and I had never talked about it before. But I felt safe in this group to speak about it and then to say, okay, I'm going to put this to the side now. I think I don't have that shame anymore. It's a life-changing experience, but in some ways it can be a little frightening when we've held our emotions so tightly for so many years. And I love what you say about that feeling of safety. So finding that right practitioner is crucial to, I mean, it's essentially, if you look at it, when people find a therapist, you have to find the right fit who is going to walk with you and help you heal. I think the same is for breath work and for the groups that you add yourself into, that energy. Do you agree?
Yes, I absolutely 100% agree. And in our breathwork training, we always talked about the group intelligence, that there's certain intelligence that brings these breathwork groups together. And yeah, you'll notice that suddenly how you can relate to the experiences that people share about their struggles and challenges people share.
That's so beautiful. And I think it's so needed today. Can you share a story of a breakthrough or transformation? And you talked a little bit about your own experience with breath work, but maybe without, of course, identifying anybody, one of your clients, a transformation that captures the beauty that can emerge from breath work, from someone letting go of that feeling of brokenness.
Yes, the story that comes to mind immediately, I almost want to cry when I tell this story. It was a guy, he was in his 50s, and he started sharing his experience about breathwork. He he had this memory from his early childhood, how he was wanting to fly a kite together with his father. And the kite didn't fly, and he was getting angry at his father. And for years, he was thinking his father didn't care about him or didn't want to help him. And he had this very difficult relationship with his father. And in the breathwork session, he relived the experience from his early childhood, his memory. And he was seeing how his dad was trying to tie the knots, and his dad was unable to do it. And his dad was putting all his love into helping his child and failed. And I think that is how you can change your relationship with childhood trauma, because you have the opportunity to relive childhood trauma and you start seeing it from a totally different angle. When we are children and something happens to us, we see it with a very narrow mind or view, and we only see a very small aspect. And then suddenly seeing it from a different light can really help us change the relationship with the trauma, and seeing that what we perceived was not necessarily what happened.
Oh my goodness, what a wonderful experience to be able to have that memory and then to be able to look at it in that different from a different perspective and heal. That's so beautiful. That must have been transformational for that person. That's beautiful.
Yes, it was I felt so touched when he shared that story with me, and he had tears of joy coming out, and I felt the same tears coming out to I usually don't get very emotional when I speak, but thinking about this story when he shared it, something inside of me shifts.
Mm, that's beautiful. So we work through breathwork sessions, and how tell our audience how often they can do breathwork. If they wanted to do breathwork, what are your recommendations? What do you say they should do?
Yeah, I think it's very individual, and most people know better than I do what's best for them. My recommendation is to start once a week for 3 months, and then maybe go to 2 weeks or once a month. The most important thing is to stay consistent at first. And it's also important to do the integration work in between the sessions. Because if you have a deep experience and you don't do any integration work, process what come up and start making changes in your life, you might go through a similar experience over and over again. Or you get stuck and you think, well, nothing's happening, nothing's changing, nothing's coming up. And that can happen when we fail to integrate or process the experience.
And so when you speak about the integration work, are you talking about self-care rituals, journaling, things that they would take beyond the breathwork session to continue to work on what came up from their time with you?
Yes, exactly. Journaling is a very powerful way to integrate. Noticing small shifts in behavior, in emotions. Are you less irritable? Are you less angry? Are you more present? Breathwork enhances neuroplasticity. So your brain becomes more neuroplastic, and it's easier to create new connections and wirings. But you have to do something with it and make use of it. And every time you notice that you changed, and write it down and journal about it or share it with a coach in a sharing circle, you start strengthening those new wirings and connections in the brain. And then also taking small, consistent steps on a daily basis on insights and realizations you receive during the breathwork session. When you used to get angry, instead of getting angry, taking a deep breath and waiting a few seconds before you react, or just being kinder, being more friendly, or you realized, oh, I've been stuck in life because I have this fear and I have avoided facing my fear, and then taking small, simple steps to start facing that fear. I can share from my own experience. I avoided public speaking. I avoided even speaking in groups, especially management groups, which limited me very much doing work, because I had this belief that I cannot speak in public. And this is something I ran away, I avoided for 20 years. And during the breathwork class, we had to share once a week for 6 months. We had a meeting and I had to share 5 minutes. So I had started practicing. Then we started to have to record videos about our breathwork experience, start video comments on other people. And after that, I started making Facebook live videos and eventually joined a Toastmasters group to practice my public speaking. And those are the little integration steps that,
Yeah.
and it's different for everybody.
I know for me, one of the things that I started to notice was, as a recovering type A people pleaser, I did really started to notice that it became very easy for me to let things go that would have previously really bothered me. That would have been like sandpaper on my arm. It just would have irritated me. I would have been irritable with the people who are around me. I don't have a good poker face. Strangers could probably see that I was irritated with something. And all of a sudden, I noticed, like halfway through the day, that I was letting things go that had previously just would have sent me to a angry place. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what this is the biggest gift ever, not to feel that irritation, just to be able to, that's not worth that's I'm protecting my peace. That's not worth it." And just to let that go, it was, I mean, I think that's been the biggest gift for me.
Yes, I'm so glad you had that experience. And I can relate to that. It is also one of the biggest gifts I've received through breathwork. Not being reactive, not getting angry at little things that used to make me angry or mad. And whenever I feel the emotions arise, just taking a deep breath and allowing these emotions to pass instead of resisting them. And it's a practice we can practice daily, and it gets easier and easier over time. If you are familiar with Michael Singer, who wrote the book The Untamed Soul, in a podcast he said, start with low-hanging fruit. When someone cuts you out off in front of traffic, instead of getting angry, saying, well, maybe they weren't paying attention, maybe they are in a hurry, it has nothing to do with me. And yes, you start walking through life with so much more grace and ease and behind people around you.
It is a gift too when you give people grace. It's a gift to yourself as well as to that person, to get to that point where you can let go. I remember being in a writing weekend with Wayne Dyer, and one of the things that he was saying, it was just amazing just to be in the same room with him and listen to his wisdom. But he said, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?" And that was a life-changing moment for me, because I was like, "Oh my God, yes, I've spent all this time wanting to be right."
Mm-hmm.
And at the expense of my happiness. And I think just becoming aware of some of the ways that we hold ourselves back. If we come out of a breathwork session and we can recognize those ways, then we can begin the process of letting them go.
Yes.
But when you say, the journaling and your practices during the day, do you recommend that people journal with a pen and an actual journal, or type on their phone, or is there anything? Because I'm a pen and paper journal kind of writer. What are your recommendations?
I absolutely love pen and paper. I would recommend anyone using pen and paper. But if it doesn't feel right, it's better to use a computer or phone than not to journal. And some people use voice journal. Voice journal
Mm,
can be very, very powerful. Just speaking out what comes to mind. And nowadays, with technology, you can have it transcribed, you can get it summarized. But I think there's something special in using pen and paper. And I always say paper is very patient. It listens without
mm,
talking back, without judgment, without criticizing. It's a really good way to let things go and let them out.
that's a beautiful way to describe it. You have a background in engineering, right?
I studied electrical engineering. Yes.
What part of that do you take with you into your practice now? I mean, you have that kind of engineer brain, and so how does that integrate into your daily practice now?
Very good question. I never thought about it because after I studied electric engineering, I pursued a job that had very little to do with electric engineering. But I just started, I guess, integrating what I learned in at university with breathwork is that everything is energy, and the energy we put into life is the energy we get back.
Mm.
Energy doesn't die, energy just transforms. And yeah, I think those are my.
I think that's a beautiful lesson, that energy does not die. It just transforms. I think that's a wonderful thing to carry with us. I just want to give a couple of quotes here that really touched me from you. And this one, most of the emotional weight you carry is not coming from the situation. It's coming from unresolved, unconscious emotions stored in your nervous system. Your environment simply activates what's already inside. I love how you can take a very complex subject. And I think that that's where probably the engineering part, why I asked that question. And you can drill down and make this into a very understandable person, like for a layperson who knows nothing about this topic. You have this way of explaining it that makes it accessible to people. And I love that for you. I love it about you. Another quote: when you face and integrate the suppressed or avoided emotions created through generational trauma, you begin to break the cycle and free future generations from reliving your past. I cried when I read that last night, thinking about, because it's not only the generational trauma. We think when we hear that, you sometimes think it's just in the generations before us. We forget about the generations that are coming after. And what a beautiful gift to our children.
Yes, I think it was Gabor Mate who said that the children swim in the ocean of our unexpressed emotions, and everything that we don't release, they inherit.
Mm. I mean, he's so wise. I just love him. There's so many people that we can learn so much from these days. Before we finish up, is there anything that I have not asked you that I should have?
I want to say a few things about gratitude,
Yes.
because I know that's what your podcast is about as well.
Mhm.
And I found I transformed all my guilt, regret, and shame into gratitude. Gratitude for my past lifestyle choices, gratitude for the pain that my opiate addiction put me through. Because of this pain, I started seeking for better ways, for solutions. And I truly believe that this pain is what eventually led me to breathwork and made created my life's mission and purpose. So instead of regretting all the things from my past, I found gratitude. And that helped me find gratitude for every single thing I experienced in my life, because everything I experienced brought me to where I am today. And in breathwork, we say, trust the process. Trust the process of breathwork. And when we start trusting breathwork, we start trusting life, realizing that everything here happens for a certain reason, to help us grow, to help us get stronger, to help us heal. And it makes it so much easier to address everyday life challenges with that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Very
And
important part.
that's such a good point. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And I too, my gratitude practice started at my lowest point in my life. I think sometimes when people talk about gratitude, they think it's only for the blue sky days. But the true strength of gratitude comes when you are looking for something to hold on to. And one of the things that, just to veer off a little bit, but I had my son who started me on this gratitude journey when he passed. But when I had him, I was a teenager, and it was a twin pregnancy. I had never talked about that ever to anybody until Stephen died 23 years later. When I could finally look at that situation and see that although, it doesn't change the pain of a loss, but I could be grateful because I could see that all of this had prepared me to take this next step. I think what you're saying about gratitude is so important. I know when I first started this, and my first book is called Gratitude and Grief. Not everybody understood how I could find gratitude when I was grieving. But for our family, that was how we tethered ourselves to each other and to the present moment. And in the present moment, you're safe always.
Yes, yes, I think it's really difficult to people who have not found that gratitude yet to see how people can find gratitude for their deepest challenges in life.
Mm-hmm.
When I started my gratitude journal, sometimes I thought, what can I be grateful for today? And little came to mind. But the more you start looking, the more things you can find to be grateful for. And it starts piling up.
And you're changing your pathways in your brain. The more that you search, the more that you find. And I always say, like, it's not the cars or the rings or the big fancy trips. It's the cardinal sitting out on the branch saying good morning. It's the simple things. I did a little thing last year where for the entire month I looked for gratitude in my yard. I didn't even leave my driveway. That was my goal, like my daily gratitude. I didn't even have to leave my backyard. Everything was there, everything that I needed. And I think that it's important that we talk about gratitude as people use breath work for healing, because that is one of what I would say would be a great integrative practice for them to do in between the sessions, to keep them, on that path. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. And that is also part of what I work with people on, to integrate a gratitude journal into their life, and using that at the end of the day just to reflect and find the things you can be grateful for you. And as you mentioned, yes, if you start to look, everything you need is right in front of you if you're just willing to open your eyes and see.
That is so true. Hans, I am so grateful that you took the time to come and speak with me this morning.
I just want to say one last thing
Oh,
that
yes.
I'd like to add, and it doesn't have to be a big breathwork session. If you just every time throughout the day when you realize you're distracted or you remember to breathe, just take 2 or 3 conscious breaths into your belly, in through the nose, into your belly. And over time, these 3 breaths can be more important than the deep transformative breathwork sessions. Just awareness to whatever arises.
And we can do that any time of the day. We don't need any special equipment. We just need to become aware of our emotions and then take that opportunity with those 3 deep breaths to cleanse and kind of ground ourselves.
Yes, wonderful.
That's a beautiful bit of homework for us.
Yeah. Yes, as you said, it's a tool we have available 24 hours.
That's right. So how can people find you?
Yes, I'm most active on Facebook as Hans Andreas Weygoldt, and I'm on LinkedIn as Pneumorphosis. I do have a website, pneumorphosis.com, and I do have an Instagram account, but I'm not very active there. So the most reliable places are Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for being such an informative guest. I know our listeners, they're just going to be so informed about breathwork and the benefits of it. And I hope everybody out in the listening world takes advantage and tries this very special healing practice.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of your podcast, and thank you for your engaging questions. They always help me understand myself and my breathwork practice better, and I really, really enjoyed our conversation today.
As did I. I hope you'll come back again.